Frank J. Parisi, let's roll them. Welcome to Anatomy of an Entrepreneur. This is episode 54 in the long history of our shows. And today we have on a special guest, but before we talk about him, we're going to tell you that this show is brought to you by My Instant Office. If you need a desk, a chair, a conference room by the day, the week, or the month, come on in, sit down, and get to work. It's also brought to you by the Huntington Chamber of Commerce. Huntington Chamber of Commerce is the largest chamber of commerce in the world. Is that right, Lori?
It is correct.
No, it's not. It's the largest chamber
in
on Long
Huntington.
Island.
Oh,
I see.
sorry.
I wanted to see if you were listening.
I'm not really paying attention right now. I'm busy.
Oh, okay. It's just
I'm
how
a little
important I
busy
am.
right here.
And the former associate director, Courtney Bino, I would go to her and I'd say, "What do I say about the Huntington Chamber of Commerce?" And she said, "Just say it's the
But I
best
can't
darn
find it on
chamber
Facebook
in
either.
the world." Pretty cool, right?
That's very cool, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm trying to make sure that I'm right. I'm centered here. I have on a really awesome guest today. This gentleman, I told him that we get about 5 million views per show. And he said, "Of course I'll be on your show," because he has a new book that he's selling. And did you bring your book, by the way?
But it's in the other room.
Okay. Why don't you run out while I'm talking for a second?
great, yeah.
So anyway,
But I
he...
won't know what you're saying.
Yeah, well, this is a good thing. So anyway, I totally lied, but he did consent to come on. It's pretty cool. He is a professor in the Institute of Instructional Technologies at Bloomsburg State University. He is also the director of interactive technologies there. He is one of the pioneers of gamification and learning. And while this show is usually about entrepreneurialism, I think that his career and what he does is so fascinating, I had to have him come on. So I thank you very much, Dr. Kapp, for
Thanks.
coming on Anatomy of an Entrepreneur.
No, it's great to be here. Thanks so much, Cliff. I'm excited to be on the show.
Are you an entrepreneur?
I view myself as kind of an entrepreneur. I always say like an educational entrepreneur.
Well, because the thing is, you've actually stepped out of only teaching at the university, and you do a lot of stuff on your own.
I have, yeah, I do. I do consulting on my own. I do game development on my own, writing on my own. So a lot. And it's really been fascinating to see how the opportunities to educate and become, I always say I'm going beyond the four walls of the classroom. And to me, that's what makes it exciting and interesting, because I don't just teach to 30 people.
Right.
I teach to, 30,000 or whoever happens to read the book or see the content.
You've written several books, I know.
This is, I think, my 9th book.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So I have, yeah.
So this is kind of an informal setting, and I was hoping that I wouldn't have to call you Dr. Kapp. Can I call you Professor Kapp?
You can, or you just don't call me late for dinner. So
Okay.
how about Carl? That might be the best
Okay, then I'll call you
way,
Carl.
way to call me, yeah.
I'll call you Carl.
Right.
So were you like a study nerd, a bookworm in school? Like, how did you get down this path that you were like a doctor of learning?
Right. So, well, actually, in 3rd grade, the 3rd grade teacher took my mom aside and said, this kid might not even make it out of 6th grade, so you better find another career for this guy. So my mom was all like upset or whatever. And I think what it really was I was kind of bored in school. And so like in 6th grade, I figured out that school is a system. And if you work the system, you could get really far ahead without being hassled. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. So I just kind of worked the system and did kind of what I needed to do and was a pretty good student and studied when I needed to study and all that kind of stuff. And then I wanted to, I found a lot of excitement in helping other people learn things. I was an assistant swim coach and soccer coach and that kind of stuff. And then someone said, well, maybe you should teach. Maybe that's a good career for you. And I'm like, okay. But I didn't really want to teach at the high school or elementary school level. I wanted to have an opportunity to kind of dig deeper into content and deeper into, the concepts that I was looking at. And so a college professor seemed to be the good way to go. So, I set my track there. And I also knew that being a college professor would give me the opportunity, really like a platform to jump off of and to do other things. And so
You actually thought that far ahead?
I did, yeah. I thought that would give, yeah, I really did. So it was so funny. One time I saw a professional speaker. He was Dr. such and such, and he came out and gave this like inspirational speech and everything. And then I'm reading his bio, find out he was a dentist. Now,
Really?
there's not anything wrong with the dentist, but like a doctor, I'm thinking,
Right.
oh, this guy's
Yeah.
like, wow, really studied learning. And no, he wasn't. So, and he was talking something not even in his field. So I'm like, okay, well, if that guy can do that, I can do that. So that was kind of my impetus into that
Yeah.
career. Yeah.
Well, maybe I should call myself a doctor.
There you go. You could play one on TV.
I already do. I'm on TV right now, and I
Right.
call myself Dr. C. What do you think, Lori?
I don't know if that's going to fly very well.
Okay. Look, if usually I sit over there. It's because I can see
okay.
Lori.
Oh, right.
So you're going to actually
the
have
hot
to
seat.
look at Lori from time to
Okay.
time to see if there's a question
Make sure she's still there.
that comes up.
Oh.
Well, yeah, make sure she's still there. Exactly.
She's not running away.
No, I change her to the desk.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, Lori? So
Is that OSHA?
he's HIPAA. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
One of the two.
something. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so you seem to have found a niche, and you got into becoming a professor. When did the whole gaming thing happen? And then I do have an overall question after that.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So the gaming thing happened really because of my two, it was kind of convergent. So, the two boys, I have two boys and are playing, PlayStation. At that time it was just PlayStation, not PlayStation 4, where it is now. And, they were downstairs till 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was down there till 3 o'clock in the morning playing the game. And one day it kind of occurred to me, like, hey, wait a minute, I'm learning as I play this game. I know not to run over there because I'm going to get shot, and I know to do this. And I'm thinking, wow, all the e-learning that we're creating is really boring.
Yeah.
And the clients were like, this is not good. People aren't engaged. I mean, even back then, I think
Around when is this?
this has to be the late 90s.
Okay.
When the internet just kind of came, and so what was happening was we were creating CD-ROMs with really rich, beautiful learning experiences.
Yeah,
and
we were
then-
developing them.
Yeah. I mean, laser disc and then CDs and beautiful stuff, really graphic and all that kind of stuff. And then the web came along, and we lost all of it. Right? You couldn't play you couldn't do this on the web. Right?
No.
You couldn't even have images on the web.
Right.
And so it was like we just went completely backwards.
Right.
And so, struggled through that, and people were like, this
Until
is kind
Flash.
of boring. Right, until Flash, exactly. And then we decided, hey, let's create some games, let's do some action there. And it wasn't games like, you couldn't do like a PlayStation game, or you couldn't do any kind of that, but you could do little bits and pieces of games. And that kind of got me thinking about, can't we take these items and make them more engaging? Let's steal from what game designers almost intuitively knew
Right.
and intuitively did, and apply that to learning and development. So that's kind of how it got started. So I researched it, wrote a book called Gadgets, Games, and Gizmos for Learning.
I have a signed copy.
Yeah, that is my favorite of all the books I've written. That's my favorite. And then I really studied it, and gamification. That book I had to struggle to get it approved by the publisher, because they're like, we're not going to use the word gamification. What is that? Nobody knows what that means. We're not going to do it.
Which brings me to my next question.
Okay.
Which is a 3-part question.
All right.
A.
Do I need to write anything down?
You might.
Okay.
And by the way, I'm taking names, and I'll be giving. It's a little pop quiz.
All right, I got my pen ready.
Okay. A.
Yeah.
What is gamification? B. What is gaming? C. What is the difference?
Okay.
And in context of learning.
Right, exactly. So gamification is the use of game elements, game ideas, and game aesthetics in a non-game setting.
Give me an application.
So an application might be Duolingo. So you want to learn how to speak, like I go to Brazil, so I want to learn how to speak Portuguese. I'm doing a really bad job at it, but I can say obrigado,
Okay, there you
which
go.
I think means thank you. But anyway, right? Okay, anyway.
Lori knows.
So Lori,
She's Italian, she knows.
Obrigado. So gamification is using elements, bits, and pieces, parts of games, but is not an entire game itself. A game is a self-contained unit that has a defined beginning, middle, and end.
So would gamification be elements of a course, and then gaming would be an entire
Kind of
course?
the entire course. Yeah, that would be a way to think about it. I always give the example is when you play a game, you're in this what's called the magic circle, right? The things in the game exist there, but nowhere else. So, for example, if you play golf, the game of golf does not allow you to pick up that stupid white ball and put it in the hole, which would make it a heck of a lot easier. But the rules, you can't do that.
Right.
Gamification would be you might go to McDonald's or something and have a scratch-off golf game where you kind of scratch that off, or a golf instance like, oh, okay, that's it. I get points for that. I can be on a leaderboard. So it's elements or pieces of games, but not the whole game experience itself.
Gotcha.
The problem is it becomes a little bit blurred when people use a number of gamification elements or game elements. And if you use a bunch of them, then where's the line between a game and gamification? So that gets a little bit blurry between the two. I always say from a learning perspective, I don't really care what you call it or what it is, as long as you're engaging the learner. We know from a lot of research that the learner has to be engaged in order to actually learn something. And if you look at a lot of educational settings, that's not the case.
Did you have to do a lot of research to like determine, this is going to be something that is going to be that will catch on, that people will embrace?
That's a really good question. I didn't. So what I did was I'm like, oh, this game thing seems pretty cool. I'm going to run with it. And little did I know, and this gamification thing sounds pretty neat. It's been what I've been doing for a long time, but I didn't have the word for it. And a lot of people, I was challenged several, hey, we don't do games we do instructional design. We don't do games. Stop talking about games. Games aren't really where you want to be. And so I encountered some resistance to it, but I didn't really think about it. I just, the title of the book, I just kind of went my way. And then at some point I'm like, oh, there's some people behind me who are kind of following what I'm doing. Okay, this is kind of interesting. And in fact, I've recently done some really interesting research. Game-based learning, there was a book in 1970 called Serious Games. And if you go back even further to the 1800s, there's things called Kriegspel, which are games built in Prussia to teach war maneuvers and strategy. Yeah. So
this is before World War I.
Before World War I. The Japanese had an institute of gaming, and they used it to predict battles. Not very well, but they use it to predict battles. So it goes back. Somebody had mentioned there's a chess type game that uses elephants and things that were used for warfare in India that goes back to like 400 BC. So you can trace the history.
It's been around.
It's been around for a while. Yeah. It ebbs and flows.
Right.
Yeah.
And now it's really flowing.
It's really flowing. Yes.
So I have to break for 1 second because we're doing something new in the studio tonight. We're usually on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, but we're also on Zoom.
Yes.
We are actually in one of your classes right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hello, everybody.
And so I don't know whether you are on Zoom or not to look at if they have questions or want to make comments.
Okay.
Because we're only on Facebook and YouTube here.
Ah, okay.
So is there a possibility you can join the class?
Zoom? Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and can you do more than one thing at a time? Can we
I will try,
keep talking?
Yeah, let's give that a shot and see if I can actually do that.
Laura, do you have any questions so far?
One question. Is this sort of, I'm trying to understand exactly what you're saying. So is this sort of on a scale of, I went to school as a kid and we had to learn words, vocabulary words. And the teacher said, if you sing a song with the words in it, you'll remember it better. Something along that line, like it's another way for you to learn something.
Right, it's another way to. Right, it's another modality for learning.
Right.
So singing a song's not really gamification, but
it should mean not. I don't mean singing a song. I mean like learning it a different way than your standard learning something.
Absolutely,
it's a different way to
absolutely.
approach and to learn something.
Yeah, although a lot of people would say, like a lot of people said to me, "Oh, school, you don't want to gamify school. It's serious, blah 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 blah." But if you look at school, it has a lot of gamified elements. So, for example, you take a spelling test and you get 10 points. So words are worth points.
Right.
That's not real. That's like a gamified thing. You are in grade level 1, 2, 3. So you level up in school. You get a letter grade, which is a badge. So a lot of school stuff is gamification stuff.
I know that you're going to you're getting on Zoom, but you're also going to go onto you're going to actually take control of our system and
I am,
show
yes.
us stuff.
Yeah.
But, there's a big controversy now with gaming and teaching, and that has to do with video games. And there's this big resistance to it, just like there was in gamification when you first were pioneering in it. And people are going, well, how can you do that? What you're doing is you're propagating something we don't want them doing. This is just my opinion. The train left the station, folks, and it's not coming back. So either we access the way people learn, or they're not going to want to learn. Agree or disagree, and why?
So I agree and disagree. So I think we're not going to abandon completely the old ways that we've learned. We still can learn through lecture. We can still do that. But as kids are more and more engaged in games and game-like experiences, their expectation for learning is changing. And so if we're not keeping up with their expectations, they're going to get bored in school. They're going to get disinterested. They're not going to be as engaged. And on the other side, look how engaging we're making our gadgets and our experiences and all those kind of things. And you and I were talking earlier how, like retail employee, our whole society is moving toward an experience-based society,
right?
Where, we can buy anything online, it's impersonal, and we just do it. But so why do we go to a store? Well, store now has to be this different kind of experience than what you just run in and grab something. And I think education's a lot like that. There's a bunch of educators that are working on some really neat, there's one called Tricinium, and they actually have an entire algebra course called Variant, which is a game. And it's a 3D, AAA title, high quality game that teaches calculus. And to me, that's just a really great way, Tricinium, I'll have to find the spelling. We'll put show notes. We can put that in show notes.
No.
No?
But we can put it on the screen.
I can find the, okay, yeah.
Actually,
Let me find the website.
Can type in real time.
I feel bad I'm butchering their name, but it's like I've been up since 5 o'clock in the morning. So anyway. I
don't feel bad.
Yeah. You were up earlier?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, so there's people that are doing that, and it's making a difference, and it's really helping people learn. And learning was so, like I said before, I found out the system, and you could work the system. But if you didn't know the system, or you didn't want to work the system, you weren't going to learn anything. You were going to be stuck. And so now games allow those folks who are stuck to kind of move through and learn at their own pace. And
right.
I mean, games they provide you immediate feedback. They are adaptive to how you're learning or not learning, because you could do the same thing over and over and over again in a game, and it doesn't care. So there's lots of value to that.
You know how there's 5 different styles of learning? Is that what it is, 5?
Yeah, there's
something like that?
Yeah.
Would you add gaming as another style?
Well, okay, 2 things about that.
Or does it use a lot of different styles?
I think it uses a lot. Well, first of all, there's no empirical evidence that learning styles actually influence learning. So just because you're a kinesthetic, like you like kinesthetic, doesn't mean you actually learn better that way or like visual. But Kolb, the guy who talked about it, basically said, hey, all these things together are what make good learning. And if you look at games, all those things together make good learning. So that's, I think, what makes learning so exciting from a game perspective, is because it adds so many different things. And if you like visuals, like I read an article one time about a blind gentleman who could play this one game completely through sound, because the sound engineers did such a good job programming in the sound. So imagine that he could figure it out.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But that's proof that there's multiple styles of learning within gaming.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it tells us that there's no black or white then on learning styles.
Right.
We may lean one way or another,
right.
But we all use various.
Yeah,
learning
I call them
styles.
learning preferences.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm old school.
Yeah.
You're not as old as me.
I don't know. Should I join via the computer audio then? That's the best way to join?
No, audio. I don't know how you should join because they're not going to be able to talk back to us.
Okay.
By the way, Frank, we can't see. We're seeing another screen on the confidence monitor. We're seeing a desktop.
Yeah.
Are you having
I'll
issues?
Yeah, no, I'll switch back in a second. I'm just trying to do something.
Okay.
Okay.
Frank's just trying to do something.
Do something. Okay, that's fine. So, I mean, I can turn on my... So they can hear me and everything?
They should be able to hear you. We
Okay.
did test
Hey,
it.
Sean, can you hear me?
Don't
Talia,
shake his
can you
head.
hear me?
Tell them to type or can you
Yeah,
see
just
them?
type. I can see their names on there.
Okay, so ask
yeah,
them to
okay,
type.
great. So I'm doing a different kind of class tonight, guys. I'm with my good friend Cliff. We're live streaming this. Where is this live stream?
So
Cliff?
this
All
is
over,
live
right?
streaming on the Streamcast Network Facebook page.
Uh-huh.
It's live streaming on YouTube, and it's also live streaming at streamcastnetwork.com.
Ah, fantastic. Yeah. So we're all
So
over.
we're on 4 platforms tonight.
Okay, awesome.
That's pretty
That's
cool,
pretty cool.
isn't it?
That's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And not only that, but now you're going to do something really cool where you're actually going to wirelessly be able to show us graphics and charts or any videos in our system, and you're going to be able to take control of our system as long as
Awesome.
Frank's lets you, because I know he's still working on something. I don't know what he's doing back there. Frank's like a little mad scientist.
He did something good.
Frank,
Yeah.
we love you. And kids, Frank's really a good guy. I don't care what anybody says. So, Carl, I'm going to let you take over. Lori, anything else so far?
No, I have 100 questions myself.
Is it screencast?
Stream.
Stream.
As in, like, you're rowing a boat in a stream.
Streamcast.com.
Com. Streamcastnetwork.com.
Streamcastnetwork.com.
Lori K has a lot of questions. Is it okay if she asks questions while you
Please,
do
yeah.
that? Lori, ask one.
I want to know, do you teach a class about gamification or do you teach a class with a subject using gamification?
Right. So I actually do both.
Okay.
So the class I teach tonight is about gamification, and we use some gamification software. But then I teach a class called Managing E-Learning Projects.
Okay.
And that class is basically a game. So I started teaching that class back in 1997. And what happens is I form students into teams. Into companies, and the companies get a fake request for proposal, and then they compete against each other to actually see which team wins the contract.
Okay.
So that's a whole gamified learning experience for them because it's as if you're, running your own company and competing, but you're not really. It's kind of a game environment. There's definitely winners, there's definitely losers. So I incorporate that into the experience. The other classes where I'm actually teaching the students themselves how to create gamified experiences. So one thing that's really popular right now, for example, is escape rooms.
Right.
So
Yeah.
a lot of escape room learning experiences are
that's interesting.
designed. Yes.
So a lot of the gaming that you teach, develop, and others do isn't just digital. It can be like
Right, yeah.
really experiential that you're there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you
Yeah.
could actually do a learning game in an escape room?
Yes. Yeah.
Give
so
us an example.
So, for example, let's say that you need to unlock a lock that's a alpha lock. So you could have a diary of the person who's in the room, and the diary contains information about maybe leadership or sales negotiations or some kind of skill set that you want to teach as a result of that, collaborative sales maybe. And so you go through that, you find the keywords, you find the word search, you find them, you open the lock, it opens something that has
Yeah.
information about, oh, here's 3 things you need to know to close a sale.
Yeah.
Okay, I need this over here. So you can add those elements in there, and then really the value of learning. And so are we ready for the, could I put up a slide?
Frank, do you have it also
So,
in the wide?
One of the values of,
Here you go, Carl. You see it?
I do, yeah.
Can you go full screen on that stuff?
Whoa. There. So,
Frank, what happened?
uh-oh.
Took it off because I didn't want him to.
There we
Oh,
go.
gotcha.
Okay. So, there we are. So the ideal learning event for a game
And
is
Frank, you can push them full screen whenever you
Full
feel like
screen?
it.
Okay.
awesome. So the ideal event is you tell the learners what they're going to learn about, what they should pay attention to in the game experience. Then have them play the actual game itself. and then finally debrief or reflect about the game. So that 3-part process is what really makes it kind of interesting. And we have 2 of the 3 parts up there.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think it's giving Lori ideas for like some of the classes she teaches.
Oh, cool.
No, but
Awesome.
I have a question. I mean, this is the first time I'm really hearing this. So my question is, are there different levels of this? Like, this is so interesting to colleges and things like that, but could you take this idea of this mode that you're using and use it in with children with autism and children with disabilities to learn a different way?
Carl, tell about the conference call you were having and what that
Oh,
is.
yeah. Okay. So to answer your question, absolutely. And there's a lot of really interesting games to help. There's a whole genre to help autistic kids with social interactions because, sometimes they have trouble with that, and the games can help practice that. I'm working on a gamified solution called iLookout with some folks from Penn State and really all over the country, where we're teaching childcare workers in Maine how to identify child abuse. And every week we're sending them information, and some of it's gamified. So there's one, like a puzzle that you put together to see where a child has bruises. And so one of the phrases is, if they're too young to cruise, they're too young to bruise. So if a child has bruises and they're not yet crawling, then there's a level of suspicion. It doesn't automatically mean it, but it's certainly something that you should pay attention to. And we have characters that relate to the child care workers, and we have like word games for them to play. We have some concept games for them to play, like match the concepts together. So at first when they approached me, I'm like, I don't know gamification of child abuse, I'm not quite sure I want to be involved with that, but the gamification to help the child care workers. Because if you think about it, the demographic tends to be young women from 18 to 35 who are, that's maybe their first job, and they're like to play games on their phone, and they like to have, so it actually fit quite naturally to give them the information they need to protect those children. So that's been a really exciting
fascinating.
project.
That is fascinating.
Isn't it?
Yeah, that's been great.
Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
There's so many things that you could. This could branch off to things that you would never even think of, and
he's worked with Kellogg's, Black & Decker. He's worked with like large corporations all over.
Yeah,
Very
yeah, we do
interesting.
a lot. Several of the FANG companies I've done workshops for and kind of help them think about what you want to do with. It's really about engagement, and I think what happens is
I can't agree more.
Yeah, it absolutely. What happens is, we're so big on analytics and numbers and all that kind of stuff that we lose the humanity of interaction and experience. And I think what we're striving to find is, how do we get that back? And a game, you can get 8 people around the room. You can play a quick card game, and immediately it's a social accelerant, right? You're talking to people, you're laughing, you're finding out about them. It's a perfect way.
I liken it to live streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Live streaming
Right.
is so parallel to that, because live streaming is about the engagement.
Yeah.
And I think if you mix that with live streaming, I think that's even more powerful.
Yeah, agreed.
It's really
Absolutely,
cool.
yeah.
So I'm going to be quiet if you want to talk more, show us more about some of the things that you're doing.
Yeah. So one of the cool things I've been working on is this board game, and this is for it's called a total office call. So pharmaceutical firms, it used to be that you would go right in and talk to the physician, but now you need to talk to everybody in the office. And so
Push it big, Frank, if you can.
we developed this really cool game to kind of do that. And it's been played at a national sales meeting. So the idea is you get people to sit around a table and discuss a topic you want them to discuss. And in a game, most people kind of let their guard down a little bit, and they're more open to discussing things. And then you can say, well, how'd you do that? Or why did you think that? Or why did you do that particular move? And doing that allows people to have genuine conversations.
You know what I think is also interesting about it? It's not just learning for the learner. It seems to me like it's almost a focus group too.
It can absolutely be. Absolutely, yeah. We've had, remember how I said earlier, the Japanese use games to kind of like predict. I think companies can use games, and actually in the intelligence agency. So the CIA, this is really cool. The CIA way back when had a game about El Chapo. And the idea was that you would find out how El Chapo carried on all his illegal activities, what arrangements he had, who he was making dealings with, and you had to try to track him down and put together the pieces.
Wow.
So I thought that was fascinating that, the CIA was creating this game to help their agents think through how El Chapo was thinking.
Wow, that's amazing.
And find, what he was doing.
You've worked with the government on some level.
I have, yeah. Not on that project, but on some other projects.
That you can't talk about.
That
or
I
you have
cannot.
To kill us.
Right.
They should have a Jimmy Hoffa game.
They should. They should.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's so many different ways that you can do it. So think of a company, for example, who might want to do strategic planning against a competitor or against a competitive changing marketplace. And you assign people different roles to play in the marketplace. And around the table now, it starts to expose ideas and concepts about how to get ahead in that marketplace. Or another thing that I do frequently is games for role play. So you get a bunch of salespeople together. They don't want to do a role play. They're better than that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you have this game. I have this game called Zombie Sales Apocalypse, like right here. A little what's that with Bugs Bunny and the basketball player? There's a movie about that. Space Jam, right. Bugs Bunny said...
Well, Frank, you weren't even born yet.
Frank rocks.
But Bugs Bunny makes a comment about Walmart, and he's like, is that fortunate timing or just bad product placement? So this is bad product placement. But
Like Wayne and Garth.
Exactly, yeah. So anyway, so in the game, you have a role that you have to play, but then I can challenge you. Or I can tell you to add something different, or I can say wrong and here's why. And what that does is it actually exposes your thoughts and your ideas in a challenging way that maybe you didn't think about before and that you would never do in a regular role play. Because you have that sense of it's a game, so it's okay for me to challenge you, and I don't have to be nice because we're playing a game. And so a lot of the natural barriers that we have in corporate conversations can come down a little bit and allow you to practice and nurture, the skill set that you really want to nurture. So I think it's really exciting, and it's interesting. I talked about before in the 1970s. Actually, I'm reading all these books now about the game development in the 1970s, and the cool thing is I'm buying them from Amazon, and they're all old library books that nobody cares about anymore.
Right.
So it still has the card from the
Right.
librarian.
Yeah.
But one of the books said it's becoming kind of obnoxious because having a game in the executive suite is now seen as a sign of cachet or whatever. I'm like, that went away.
Did you have to pay late fees for the books?
I don't know. I'm waiting for the librarian to show up at my house and go, these are stolen, don't you?
Yeah.
No, I don't
Right
know.
from the Huntington Public Library.
Yeah.
I think this also shows somebody's strengths and weaknesses. Maybe somebody figures something out and be like, you know what, I did that, and I didn't think that maybe I could figure that out. And as a boss or a teacher looking on, like, you just uncovered a strength that you didn't know. Maybe you didn't know you had, and things like that.
It does. I mean, it uncovers strengths, weaknesses, lack of knowledge, lack of understanding the process, like all that kind of stuff can come out. I recently developed another game. It's a sorting game. And so you have to sort different things in different categories, right? So I do it for instructional design, but imagine if you're selling different types of phones. Okay, what features are on iOS versus an Android, right? And you search them, and there's something about physically manipulating an object that makes a difference. And so games where you're throwing things down helps both with your muscle memory as well as your cognitive memory. So it's really kind of an interesting pairing of the two. And then the neat thing about the zombie game is that, well, a lot of companies will say, Carl, I love the concept of the zombie games, but we're a company and we're not doing zombies. So I'm like, first of all, I'm crushed. But second of all, we can actually customize it. So we've done versions of the game without a zombie. Maybe it's a competitive salesperson or whatever comes and does the role play or stuff like that.
Right.
But the frame is there. The structure is already there. So all we're doing is changing the content. And so now it makes it very economical and very quick. Hey, we got a sales meeting in a month. can you, come up with a custom game? Yeah, because we'll take your content, we'll
Right.
do a couple changes to the zombies, and boom, all of a sudden you've got this game that you can play very quickly and easily. And the cool thing is we've seen the reps at the bar after, the meetings.
They're still playing the game
the
at the
card
bar?
game. Yeah. Now I would say I can't guarantee they're playing the same game, but they are being exposed to the concepts.
Do learners pick up concepts more quickly through gamification and gaming? Or do they pick it up with more depth or better retention?
More depth and retention. I wouldn't necessarily say it's faster, because here's a problem that I have with a lot of training is I can tell you like 24 things in like a minute and a half, but how many of those are you going to remember? Not very many. And so we tend to judge training by, oh, I've got to cover all these slides, or I've got to cover all this information. Well, just because you covered it doesn't mean I learned it. So with games, that goes a little bit deeper. So maybe you can't cover all the information, but you can really get into it much more deeply. And my friend Clark Aldridge says with conviction. And so if you're in there with conviction about your role play or about challenging somebody or about doing the right thing, that level of conviction then translates back onto the job. It translates in your interaction with other people. It translates in terms of you reflecting. So I would say that you get a deeper knowledge from the game,
Right.
not necessarily more content.
So I want to talk about passion for a
Okay.
second. Does gaming help stimulate, or is it a catalyst for passion? Instead of like, okay, kids, now we're going to talk about geometry. This is a hypotenuse. Can it actually stimulate somebody to go, oh, this is kind of interesting because it's in the format of a game?
Yeah, I believe so. When I think about games and motivation and passion, is that people are motivated or passionate when they have a chance to make a difference or contribute or see that what they're doing matters. So if you think about a game where everybody has an equal chance to win, and you start playing some kind of game maybe about triangles and you have to, do the angles or whatever, everyone can contribute. Everyone can be involved. Everyone has a fair chance to win. It's a lot of times when you go to a classroom, the smart kids in class raise their hand all the time and answer the question. And maybe you don't want to say something in front of everybody because you're going to look dumb or whatever. But in a game, like, okay, it's your turn. You have to go. Like, you don't have a choice.
Right.
So you're convicted on, okay, I'm going to do this. And you know what?
Committed.
Yeah. Chances are you might know more than you think you know. Right. And that's okay. And the other interesting thing is some research has shown that kids, when they're playing games, and they lose, they don't blame it on, oh, I'm dumb, I'm stupid. It's, oh, the game I lost because I wasn't lucky or whatever. And so self-efficacy is higher when you're playing a game than you're sitting in the back of a classroom. I didn't get the answer because I don't know anything.
Right. Do you want to show us some more stuff, or do you want to take another question from Lori?
Sure.
Cake?
No. Well, if Lori's got another
bit.
question,
No,
I'll be glad to
I'm
answer
good
it.
right now. I'm
Okay.
taking this all in.
Okay.
Cool. So let me. So this is the game, the Total Recall game. I don't know if
Is Arnold Schwarzenegger in
can
it?
see it. No, and I don't know if it's a copyright violation or not. But the "re" is in parentheses. But what happens in this game is
Full screen,
it
please.
looks a little bit like Clue. And the idea is that you go in, and each of these rooms has a different card in it, and you click on, and not click. This is a physical board game. You click on it, and or you go and you grab a card, and then each card has a little scenario. So in this scenario, the receptionist, she's not doing very well, and she's in a bad mood. So your decision is: do you want to chit chat with the receptionist, or you just want to blow by to the receptionist to get to the really person that you want to talk to? Of course, you want to talk to the receptionist, but some new sales rep might not know that or whatever, may not do that. So you have the card, and then you choose your consequence. And then the consequence here, we have what's called an impact score. So when you think about games and you think about learning and you think about performance, a lot of times if you just check, for example, for quantity, you might get bad quality, but you're just checking for quantity. So in the game, what we do is we have different scores so that you can't just optimize one thing at the expense of others.
That's very smart, because so much of e-learning that I've seen and know people have developed, it's about how do we get an employee to check off a box not how do I learn something or how do I get them motivated about something.
Exactly.
And that's
yeah.
what this pushes them to do.
Yeah, exactly. It does. I mean, think about if you were learning compliance or something and you started off with, there's been an accident, you've got to do something right away, right? So that's a lot different than here are the 3 things you shouldn't do to ensure your safety, right? So just even starting with a different perspective, a game type perspective, can draw somebody in. Like I did a study one time. This company, they had a chemical spill, and they had me come in to see if the training was appropriate. And the interesting thing to me was they had a lesson on not spilling stuff down the drain that was 13 minutes long. The average person took about 13 minutes to go through it. But I asked in a focus group, what don't you like about that training? And so these people only see this training once a year for 13 minutes, and they said it's the same thing all the time, every year. Every year it's the same thing. So of course they're going to get dull to it, bored to it, etc. But a game, even the same game, when you play with different people or different parameters, is different. So Trivial Pursuit's the same game. They don't change the questions, right? But which question you're asked, which direction you go, who you're playing against, somebody that knows everything or somebody that doesn't, it's a different game. So one of the things that games do really well is they make it a different experience every time. And the neat thing about this is there's been a new spate of research that says in order for you to really learn something and really understand it, you shouldn't have the same learning experience over and over again. You should vary the learning experience. So if you're practicing, for example, shooting a basket into a free throw, you should, after, I think there's like a 7-hour wait or something, but next time you practice it, move, not a lot, move like 2 inches to the left.
That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like you're using different muscles, like memory muscle,
right,
in order to learn a concept, and you have to use different ways, otherwise you don't improve.
Exactly. And you can't generalize, right? So if you can only make a free throw from the free throw line and standing in a specific spot, in a game, you're never going to get, that spot at that point in time, or rarely. But you might get something over the left or something to the right. And if you've practiced that, and if you know that, and if you've adapted,
right,
no problem.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Cliff, I have a question.
Sure.
So our friend Frank Bees is on, and his question is,
Hi, Frank.
Will e-learning replace teachers?
Well, for some things, yes. But
That's a complicated question.
that is a
too.
complicated question.
Like it's a can of worms.
Yeah, it is.
But go
It
for
is.
it.
I talked one time on a local TV station about video games, and somebody wrote in about all the vidiots, right, who are doing stuff like that. So some things, it's like anything, right? So a good, inspiring teacher who really is reaching the kids and connecting with them is not going to be replaced by a game. It's just not going to happen. I mean, the funny thing is, I used to do 3D virtual world conferences. Mm-hmm. So the software where but we would all meet together face to face. And we kept saying, well, if 3D virtual worlds are so good, why are we meeting face to face, right? It doesn't make sense. But there's a lot of value in meeting face to face. And there's a lot of things I can tell meeting you face to face that I could never tell
Absolutely.
any other way. So a certain segment will never be replaced. But we've all had those teachers that literally got in front of the room and read from their notes, or were monotone, or who were just dialing it in. They'll be replaced. So the answer is yes and no. Sometimes systems for learning like basic vocabulary and things like that, you don't need a teacher to stand in front of the room, drill and practice, but problem solving, critical thinking, connecting the dots, situational awareness, all that stuff, that needs, I think, a teacher.
I'm not in the learning business anymore, but I was always a big believer in hybrid learning. And I don't know if that's still popular or still something useful today, but there are certain things where you can learn online as like pre-course material, then you do a live, and then you do follow-up and maintenance. Is that still something that's used?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And a blended or hybrid approach, I think is probably one of the best approaches for learning. Yeah, that there is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, I have one other thing to ask.
Go for it,
Sure.
Lori.
Not so much asking, but
Lori's going
commenting.
to tell you how to do
We
gamification.
did
Oh, awesome.
We did a escape room.
Yes, we did. We were in a
And
subway car.
I've done
cool.
it.
and we died. We crashed.
Yeah, we did die. And
Sorry to
crash.
hear
We
that.
crashed and died. But I've done a few of those, and I think what's so interesting about that is that you look at it as a game, and at the end, your goal is you just want to win. You just want to get out. So I think as you approach this like this in this game, if you teach somebody this gamification, this format, people want to do good because they want to win.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right,
So instead of just sitting in a class, being bored, you want to win. So you want to learn it because you want to get to the end. If it's like a game like Clue, you want to learn it, you want to know because you want to win because everybody wants to win.
Right.
So I think it's a great idea because I would want to win. I'm like, I'm going to learn this because at the
She's
end,
not too competitive.
No.
I would want to win. So I would want to know everything I need to know.
Right.
It makes it much more interesting.
It makes it much interesting, much more fascinating. And when you overcome challenges, if people just spoon feed you content,
Right.
you don't really care, right? But if you have to overcome a challenge to learn something, then you know it because you've overcome that challenge and you really embrace it's your own. You own it. And so a lot of times that's not the case with learning, but with games it definitely is. Now, the one other thing I want to say is that, all of us here like games and enjoy games. I've gotten plenty of pushback from people that, I've had people come up to me and right to my face say, I hate games. This is stupid. So to think that games are a panacea for all kinds of learning and all kinds of people is probably not the case. But for a lot of people it is. But it's surprising to me the number of people who proudly profess that they don't like games or they want to learn traditionally. And the funny thing is they probably are creating games themselves. We've always played a game. You probably played a game where, hey, if I memorize these next 3 words, then I can go get a drink of coffee or then I'll go do whatever, right? Or I'm just going to do this one chapter a night. And if I do that, then I'm going to go out this weekend. And, there's a lot of stuff where we gamify our studying and our learning.
Yeah, it's almost like we're rewarding ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah. And we do it unconsciously, but we do it all the time.
Right.
I think it's a fundamental trait of people to want to do that.
So are any of your students interacting at all?
Yeah, I have several students who
Come on, kids. Let's go. Let's do it. Carl, stop ignoring these young minds. You come in with a mind of mush, and you'll go out thinking like a lawyer. The paper chase.
Okay.
Yeah, so bunch are online in the chat. I don't know, does anybody have a question? Anyone have a question? Let me see.
I thought you said people were. You lied.
Well,
Carl.
they're chatting, but not questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So some of them have gone to the Streamcast and they're watching it at the Streamcast.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Do they like
that's
my
very
shirt?
Cool. I don't know. Do you like Cliff's shirt? Does anyone have a comment?
Frank, we need to quit. Frank, we gotta go. We gotta go, Frank. We're done.
So, you want to read us some of the comments that you're getting?
Well, I think there's a little bit of a lag on Zoom.
Okay.
But they're saying that they let's see, listening to the stream. Stop using reverse psychology, somebody says. I'm not sure they like your shirt. Yeah, and they're talking about
Quiet, Lori.
how this is similar to other kind of programs.
It is similar or not similar?
Using games for learning is similar to others. Somebody mentioned one about Dungeons and Dragons, and there's an article about troubled kids being helped by playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons has had a resurgence.
It has, yeah, definitely.
And it's gotten very popular again.
It has. Actually, board games in general, and I think 2017, there were 5,000 new board games introduced.
Wow.
There's a place in Huntington that just opened up a brick and mortar, and they have, you go there and you play games.
Yeah.
That's what you do. You play games.
Yeah.
It just opened up in Huntington. You can go have wine or whatever, and it's just a board game.
Yeah,
What
that's
is it?
my retirement plan.
Do we get to drink?
Yeah, of course.
Cool.
Well, you have to pay for it, but yeah.
What is it, the game that your son Sean is playing, Lori? He paints all these figures,
paints
and then he goes
figures.
and
I
has
don't-
wars with them.
Oh, wow,
War-
cool.
Warhammer,
Something. I think it's something like.
where he has a group.
He does all this intricate
Tons
painting
of these little
on these figurines.
people,
Yeah.
and he hand paints each one of them, like detail paints them, and then they go and play.
Oh,
But
neat.
you have to paint
Yeah.
your army.
Can that be used in learning?
learning to paint.
Can you take that same concept and
Well,
apply
yeah,
that
the
to
concept. I think if you think about that concept, is he's adding agency to those pieces, and so a lot of times when we do online learning and online games, where you get to pick your character and dress your character and then have your character go do something. Well, there's actually research behind that says that's really valuable from a learning perspective because the person becomes vested in that particular character and then cares what that character does. So it is important putting your agency and putting your own stamp on that character, because then you feel like it's more of an extension of you than just this digital avatar. I mean, I've had experiences in games where somebody comes up and violates my personal space, and it's in a game, so who cares? But I care, right? I feel very uncomfortable. So personal space and feeling of being connected or not connected in the virtual environment is very real. Mm-hmm. So we have to pay respect to those things in a game just as we would in the physical environment.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Yes, they're parallel, and they
Definitely.
teach you. I guess it teaches you about this is what you have to do in the real world.
Right, exactly. And the interesting thing is, from a game perspective, it's actually better to look over your shoulder than to be first person. There's some research that shows when you look over your shoulder, you're a little bit removed. And so you have more of an objective view of what you're doing, and you can learn better from that third person view than the first person view.
And maybe there's a little less stress.
Yeah.
When you're looking over someone's shoulder instead of you are in the hot seat.
Right. Yeah.
Frank.
Yes.
Before I forget, did you take stuff out of the iCloud and put it in the system? Like the credits and stuff, the backgrounds?
I will grab them right now.
Yeah. I was
Wow.
wondering
So one of my students just wrote there's 4,000 new board games on Kickstarter this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's incredible.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Sean. Well, I think Kickstarter has done a tremendous favor. I mean, Exploding Kittens was one of the biggest games on Kickstarter ever.
What is it called?
It's called Exploding Kitten. Oh, you never played Exploding Kittens? No. You've got to. You would love that game. It's a really neat game, and one of the things that they did is instead of picking up the card at the beginning of your turn, you put it down at the end of your turn, which is really kind of an interesting change in dynamic.
Right.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. And then if you get the Exploding Kitten, if you can play a card to de-explode it, you're good. If not, you're out of the game, and the remaining people finish the game.
Kickstarter also has a live platform now.
I did not know that.
Which I think is really cool.
That's very cool.
If you're looking to raise funding to be able to do it live as a component of a Kickstarter campaign, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Do you have anything else that you want to show us?
So
we can keep going, but it is almost 6:30.
Okay, yeah, I should probably jump out to my class.
You're gonna let me do this alone?
Well, you're on.
Don't leave me alone in here with
I
that
know.
car.
Good luck.
I know.
I've been working on a really cool digital game, a 3D game. I also call it Zombie Sales Apocalypse. I'm not very original naming my games. But the cool thing about this, I use a platform called Learn Bright, Learn and then Brite, and it works on a laptop, VR goggles, and your cell phone, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So you can play across platforms as you do the game.
Are you going to show us something 3D right now?
I could, yeah. Let's see what I've got here.
Lori, want to save some of those chickpeas for me?
Oh, sorry.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So
Just joking.
so here is the 3D game. And then see, this guy's a zombie Ken. One of our students created the zombie Ken that looks
good. Oh, cool.
looks like Ken. And so you have this conversation with the receptionist, and the idea is if you say something wrong, Ken the zombie wants your business card.
It's nice.
So see, I've found 4 cards in my pocket, and then he wants to know how he can help me. And if I answer wrong, I have to answer 2 wrong. I'm going to activate Ken, who's going to ask for one of my business cards. So let's give this a moment here.
And then we can get in big trouble.
Yeah. Well, if you lose a business card, you have to start all over again.
Is this for like a medical sales rep?
This is for a medical sales rep. Exactly, yeah. And the other cool thing about it is it uses text-to-speech recognition. There's Ken, so he wants my business card.
Would you kindly give me another card?
Sure. And then he has to give the card. And then now I only have 3 cards left. So if you keep messing up, he keeps taking your business cards. And then, so now there's the animation. And so the idea is you don't want to give the business card to your, bad guys. You want to keep it for yourself. And so, but it doesn't have to be zombies. If you wanted to use mummies, you could use mummies, or if you wanted to use werewolves or whatever you wanted to use, and then you can explore the medical center, and there's different elements, like you can sit down, you can lay down. So if you wanted to see, he's sitting. And then this was really interesting, though. One of the things that you have to think about a game for sales reps, for example, we had this originally. Oh, now he's laying down. A little late there, buddy. Now he won't stand up.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Do any of them run at like 30 frames a second, or?
I'm not sure how fast this runs, to be honest with you.
You should speak with Doug, the receptionist.
It's interesting that some of the technology is there, but sometimes some of it's not. Like, I don't have the best computer here.
Doug fell on the floor.
He did. He's not.
Lori, get him.
He's not. He's not getting.
He's having a gallbladder attack right now.
Yeah. Oops.
I don't know if you remember, but we once did a game at the company I own where we did the game Operation.
Oh, cool.
And you could actually take things out of the body that had to do with printing and copying.
Neat.
And
Yeah.
if you didn't, the patient got sick. And if you got so many wrong, the patient actually died on the table in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun game.
Not nice. Yeah.
That's really cool.
But the cool thing about this game is, just real quick, is the analytics you can get on the back end. So here's an aggregate report. So each question in that game is tied to an element of the sales model. And so now I can measure how well each sales rep did on each element of the sales model. So I can see here's my 3 elements: engage, converse, and close. And then I have these under engage, I have uncovering needs, opening, etc. I can see 6 sales reps did poorly, 11 did really well. I can click and see who the 6 are and how they've done.
Wow, that's really cool.
Then I can go down, and see even more, like how they did on the overall model.
Right. So some of it may not even be them. It may be you. It may be your material. It may be the teacher, because you can go in there and go, wow, they're all having a problem with that specific concept. Maybe I need to teach it differently.
Exactly. And then the other neat report we have is the coaching report, which is actually my favorite report in this at all. And we've used this for a number of companies who want to. It's so funny to me. Like when I was young growing up, everyone was all about practice. Carl, you got to practice this to get better. You got to practice your instrument, all that kind of stuff. And then when you get to corporate America, like nobody practices anything. Everybody kind of knows everything. It's ridiculous. Nobody wants to practice. But what this does is give you a safe, fun environment in which to practice.
Right.
And so you don't want your sales reps to practice their skills in front of a client, because they might lose the client. So this gives you a way to practice those skills and then measure how well they're applying the skills, in kind of like a flight simulator environment.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So it's very, I think it's, to me, it's so exciting what we can do with games. And so what the coaching report does, it's taking a little while to come up here, but it shows what the non-player character said, like the receptionist, what you answered, the right answer, and then gives you coaching feedback about what you should have said.
Do you see it evolving more?
Absolutely, yeah. Where's
it going?
Well, we're working on a version where you don't pick text, you speak text. It parses the text and then gives an answer based on how you spoke it.
There's a gentleman out there by the name of Gary V.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Vaynerchuk.
Okay.
And he believes within 5 years, we won't even be texting anymore.
Wow. Yeah.
Everything will be speak to text, will be, because people with things like Alexa are actually driving what you're doing.
Yeah, they are. Actually, we can hook into Alexa, because Amazon has made some of the Alexa things open and available in her skills. Yeah. And some of the you can even connect to Watson. Like you can pay fees and connect to Watson, and then you can use some of Watson's processing powers to parse the language.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Pretty cool stuff.
Lori, are there any more questions?
Yeah, Frank wants to know, not this Frank, our other friend Frank. He says when I'm looking to learn something new, he prefers online courses versus traditional learning because of the cost.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that is really nice about online learning and even online games is once it's developed, the cost is done. If you have a class, you have to pay for the professor to be there every week. You have to pay for the facilities. You have to pay for the whatever. So online learning has greatly reduced the cost of education. I think the one thing we have to be careful of is that we don't commoditize it. So there's you don't want like any person can, hey, I'm going to do a course on gamification or statistics or whatever. I always say, well, make sure that you know where that person comes from so that their knowledge is correct. Don't get fake news in a course because the person doesn't know what they're talking about or has a wrong opinion about something and they're just telling you their opinion. So you need to be a little bit careful of that.
Right.
Some of the demise of expertise has undermined, I think, some of our knowledge bases. I mean, experts are experts for reasons. Doesn't mean you have to blindly follow everything they say, and it doesn't mean you can't learn from somebody else, but just be aware of where that knowledge is coming from.
So before you go to finish teaching your class, are there any other questions that your students have for us here in the studio,
Let
whether it
me,
be
see real
gaming,
quick.
gamification, live streaming, whatever? If anybody has needs hair replacement,
They
need
talked
speaks-
about Warcry as a
Uh-huh.
game, but that can take a while to play. Talk about football, kind of what we talked about before, where I was talking to another gentleman here where some colleges, instead of giving their football players playbooks,
Yes.
they give them the video game, a version of Madden. And actually, football coaches have said that the people they're coaching now are far more aware of formations, play types, and plays because of games like Madden. So it's really interesting how the games are actually shaping what happens in the physical playing field.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Like that's kind of like does art, form over function.
Right.
It's just incredible. So Carl, where can we find you? Mm-hmm. Where can we find your book?
Okay.
And we know you
So, yeah,
wrote
we
this book with
didn't talk
Robin D. Felice.
Micro learning.
Microlearning with Robin.
learning in
Yeah, we
small
didn't talk
pieces.
about it at all.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
just talk
okay.
about it for at least
Okay,
a minute
yeah.
so you can
All right.
hawk your wares. Tell us about
So
microlearning.
basically, micro learning. So one of the things that's really popular right now, and it's interesting because we've known this for literally hundreds of years, is that learning bits and pieces in small chunks is far better for retention and recall later on than cramming. And we all know that, right? We cram for an exam in college, you ace the exam, 3 days later, you can't remember one thing that was on the exam. You don't care. So it's a horrible way to teach, actually. Microlearning is much better because what microlearning does is it feeds you small pieces of information over time. So that's what we're doing, for example, with the childcare workers in Maine, right? We're giving them small pieces of information, what to look out for child abuse. And so a former student of mine, Robin, who's a doctor, she got her doctorate degree.
I remember when she was doing her undergrad.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah. Let's not. Yeah. Anyway, we'll fast forward through that. We'll skip a level. But basically, so she and I got together and said, there's really a need for a book about microlearning. How can we put microlearning together like that? And what can we do? So we got together and we wrote the book, and we've been on a virtual book tour. This is part of the tour, hawking the book and talking about it. And really, what we're really trying to do, I mean, the book's important, but we make like 50 cents on the road, so it's not that big of a deal. What we're really concerned about is creating good learning, and how do people create good learning. And so we took everything we knew about creating good learning from a micro-learning perspective, and we put it into the book and said, this is how you create meaningful, impactful learning that's going to make a difference.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. Whenever I am such a big proponent of taking my live streams and turning them to 1 minute segments where there's just one point I want you to pick up.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
And it plays right in with that. As a matter of fact, you know what we could do? we could have you and Robin on remotely because I know you're doing a virtual book
okay.
tour.
Yeah.
So, like in the next month or so, we could have you both on remotely, and we can do a whole show devoted just towards the microlearning.
Sure. Yeah,
If
that'd
you'd
be
like.
fantastic. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Great.
And where can we find this book?
So it's on Amazon. It's on atd.org. That's the Association for Talent Development. So if you just Google microlearning short and sweet, you'll be able to find it. My website, carlkapp.com. The best thing to do is probably follow me on Twitter.
Okay.
At KKAPP on Twitter, and then I'm constantly posting like discount codes and links to the book and all that kind of stuff. I mean,
Cool.
somebody has to pay for it, but if it was up to me, I'd give it away for free.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're such a giving guy.
Well, I try. I try.
Yeah. I really
Which might not be good on the entrepreneur show. Maybe that's not the best.
Yeah, I'm
thing.
thinking maybe we're not gonna
not
have
a
it
good
on
way
the
to end.
No,
Maybe
I'm
we
not
should
gonna
edit
have-
this.
no,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna have it on
post.
the
We'll get
show
this in
again.
post. Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. We'll cut it all out.
got that in post.
We're going to make you a ruthless shark. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I
This has been
really
great.
appreciate it. And next week, I think next week we're having on the owner of a startup called Carver Ties, where he wraps your car like you're a college student, and he wraps your car from one of his clients who's a big company, and he pays you every month to keep that wrap on your car. It's pretty
Interesting.
cool.
Yeah.
So
That's great.
that's it for tonight. We'll see you all next week. Lori Kay, anything else?
No, we're good.
Well, thank
Good
you
show.
so much for being here, Lori Kay. Frank J. Parisi, as always, it's a pleasure to have you here. And we do miss Joe Lavolsi, Officer Joe Lavolsi. He's out of town right now doing something. So we'll be back next week at 5:30. See you then.